Hey there, it's Stacia Nate and welcome back to my channel. Mwah. Okay, so we are back to talk about Married at First Sight, episode 10. If you're new here, I do obviously reviews on mafs, but I also do travel and lifestyle videos, so feel free to jump around my other videos if you're into that sort of content. I do have to apologize. I know I have not been uploading content throughout the last 3 weeks. I was on vacation and then we just had some personal things we needed to take care of, but I'm back. I'm ready to rock and roll. I do want to remind you of a few housekeeping items. Remember that I do put chapters down below so you can skip on over a couple if you are not interested in that particular one. And we have douche of the day and hero of the day for tonight's or for last night's episode. So don't forget that and make sure you stick around till the end of the episode. Also, if you're new here, we kind of just talk about each and every couple. It's not really a recap. It's more of a how do we think that you handled that issue? Could you have done anything better? We kind of judge these couples and give our opinions, even though we don't know them, even though we have never been put in that sort of bizarre circumstance, but it is our guilty pleasure. We love to talk crap. We love to input our opinions. So let's get right into it. And we are going to start with the couple that annoyed me / frustrated me the most. And it's like a toss-up between Morgan and Binh, Justin and Alexis, Morgan and Binh, Justin and Alexis. Who goes in circles more? Who is more annoying and blowing things out of proportion? Morgan and Alexis. Well, yeah, them two are from the girls. But I meant to say Morgan and Binh. So we're going to start with them. It was a lot in the sense that, let's see, how can I put these ideas so you guys can understand them? I agree with Morgan in the sense that, yes, you should not be airing your dirty laundry to other people. Yes, I agree. Binh did that. He shouldn't have done that, especially if he knows that you don't like it. But when this originally happened, that you had that conversation on the beach, I do have to remind you, Morgan, that you don't know each other. He doesn't know you. He doesn't know what bothers you. He doesn't know what triggers you. He doesn't know what you like and dislike. Just like you don't know what his communication style is. You don't know what he does when you guys argue. If he's the kind of person that's gonna go get a second opinion. Yada, yada, yada. So it takes a lot of understanding and patience when you go through a process like this, because you are marrying a complete stranger. Getting married, let alone, is a hard process when you do know the person, because you are bringing two different worlds and putting them into one. And usually when that happens, for the most part, you already know each other. So imagine going through that with someone that you have no clue about, right? So when that originally happened, that they had that conversation on the beach, she kind of blew it out of proportion-ish. That could have been a conversation where she should have just been like, hey, look, you did this. I don't like it. Let me clear up whatever issue or whatever confusion you may have about my degree. This is what it is. Da-di-da-di-da-da. Look, for future reference, I know you did this now. You don't know me. I don't know you. You don't know what I like, what I dislike. I don't think you should have done that. I don't really like it. I find it to be very rude and disrespectful. Point blank, it's done. But every single episode, she continues to bring it back and doesn't let him live down that one mistake. To her, the fact that he did that, she continues to say how she can never trust him again because she violated all of the respect that he had for her, yada, yada, yada. It's really not that big of a deal. Now, if we work to continuously do it over and over and over again, I can see why that would bother you so much. But that still doesn't give you the right to be so cruel, to berate him. The way that you went about it on your 1 month anniversary was very intended and premeditated, where Morgan kind of led Binh to believe that they were gonna have a romantic evening, and then she shows up And it kind of looked like it was a scene from a horror movie where she's like huffing and puffing coming in her dress and she's just gonna turn into a zombie and like kill him. It was really weird. There was no need for all that. So, for example, Binh is kind of like oblivious and aloof and immature. And I think it might be, I don't think he's dumb at all. Maybe he's just immature. Maybe he has no relationship experience. It seems more like Binh is a 15-year-old boy who's never had a relationship in a man's body. Could be because he's a mama's boy. I don't know. So something that would have bothered me a lot is that in the scene where Morgan is calling Binh, I keep looking away because I'm like thinking. In the scene where Morgan calls Binh to complain that he went over to Justin's house and that Alexis told her, that whole scene was extremely high school. Very high school drama because it was like Binh told Justin, Justin told Alexis, Alexis told me that you said that this. There's no need for all these people to be involved in your relationship. I agree. And Binh is so oblivious that even though she already had this conversation with him about not sharing their problems with other people, he has her on speakerphone while he's sitting in Justin and Alexis' apartment. I can understand how that would piss off Morgan. She's probably like, I already had this conversation with you. And even though I already had this conversation with you and now we're arguing, you're arguing in someone else's apartment and you have me on speakerphone. Yes, all those things, I agree with Morgan, 100%. He was wrong for that. But the way that she's expressing this anger and the way that she's carrying out all these emotions, if I were to like hear her, like the level of her voice and her anger and her fury, it's kind of like if he had just cheated on her and he did not. She went about it in such a wrong way that in the end, it left us feeling bad for Binh and thinking that Binh was the good guy because of how terribly she dealt with. So one more thing I want to add. There was a point where Morgan said something like, you know, if you're uneasy about something, then you need to come and talk to me first. You cannot go and vent our personal problems to anyone else. But Morgan, I'm not sure if this occurred to you, sweetie. Every time that Binh tries to talk to you, you are dismissive, you shut him down, or you shut yourself down. You walk away, you get really angry and mean, and you just don't let him talk. So how is someone supposed to resolve any sort of conflict when they're not even allowed to express a different opinion or thought? Obviously, he's gonna have his ideas on why he chose to do what he did. Throughout their fighting it seemed more like Morgan just wanted to win the argument as opposed to both of them trying to overcome what the problem was. So for Morgan, it was more like Morgan versus Binh instead of Morgan and Binh versus the problem. It seems like Morgan has been really hurt in the past, and all she wants to do is just fight and fight and fight because she's always looking to pick a fight in every episode, even though the fight that they're currently having is something that they resolved on the beach many episodes ago. Lindy and Miguel. Throughout last night's episode, overall they had pretty great scenes. They were happy, they were doing all right. But something that really stood out to me is Lindy's anxiety. There was a point in the episode where my alarm just went off and went brr, brr, brr. She says something like, ever since I've been with Miguel, my anxiety has really gone down, yada, yada, yada. And that is great. If you have anxiety, I have anxiety sometimes. It's great to be with someone who's not going to heighten it, who's not going to just make you worried and uncertain all the time and overthink. There's really great, there's lots of calmness in peace in being with someone that you can just easily get along with, that you can talk to when you're overthinking and whatnot. But it is also not your significant other's job to coach you through your anxiety. That's a lot of pressure that you're putting on someone. That's like grabbing all this emotional baggage and dumping it on them. That's not what they're there for. That's what counseling is there for, especially if that person doesn't know how to deal with someone with anxiety, which I think it might be Miguel, but he's doing a pretty good job of it-ish. So for the most part, you remember in the beginning, like a few episodes ago, she tells him that every time they're going to talk about decision day, that she gets really anxious and worried, and that's like a trigger word for her. So he's kind of just avoided it altogether and actually doesn't talk about him being uncertain and whatnot. So I think he's trying to push that to the side to not worry her. But Lindy, the point of the show is the uncertainty. When you sign up for the show, you don't know if you're gonna walk out with the spouse at the end of the 8 weeks. So it's also not fair to grab that and dump that on him because he signed up for the same show you did, knowing damn well that you're either gonna like this person or not. So that's what I have to say about that. Oh, also, there was, when they were celebrating their 1 month anniversary on the boat, Miguel says, I really like Lindy. I fall more and more in love with her each day. I've seen her at her lowest point. I see her through the good and the bad. And then she thinks it's funny and she's like, you haven't seen all my crazy. And he's just like worried. He's like, I haven't. She's like, oh no, buckle up. She thinks it's funny and it's not cute to dump anxiety on your significant other and then think it's cute and funny, because that's a lot that he's gonna have to put up with. So those are my 2 cents on that. Now, I think that Miguel is not 100% convinced that this is the person he wants to walk out with at the end of the 8 weeks. I think that he has refrained from talking about that because he knows that she's just gonna get all worried and concerned and start overthinking. I overall think that they are a pretty good match. They are pretty cute, pretty ditzy. But my only thing with them is, Lindy, don't dump all of that on him. That's not what your spouse is there for. They can talk you through it and help you when you are anxious, but they're not your counselors. They're not your therapist. You need to get help if that's something that you deal with on a day-to-day basis, because that can be emotionally draining for him and that can also damage the relationship. Then there was another part where they were looking through their wedding album and Lindy just starts to nitpick at everything. Oh my God, look at us here. Oh my God, look at us there. This is where we had an uncomfortable conversation. This is where we look so silly. This is where we look so ugly. This is where we look so awkward. It might be her anxiety. She's just being super self-critical, and you can see that, again, it is not cute. Miguel's kind of like, well, I'm trying to enjoy the moment, and it's very distracting that she's being so hypercritical on everything, because she's making it all about Lindy. Lindy thinks this, Lindy thinks that. Lindy, I don't like how my hair looks. I don't like how my dress looks. I don't like this. I don't like that. How about Lindy takes all those thoughts, shoves them to the side, and just focuses on the day, on the situation, how they've come a long way since then. They've had all these beautiful moments. Like, she's just so focused on the negative things that if she continues to do that, like we saw in that scene, she's gonna turn them off. So those are the only 2 things for that particular couple. I think it's definitely something that can be overcome. They're still getting to know each other. He needs to learn how to work around her, and she also has to learn how to self-regulate and know when her anxiety is talking and when her perception of the situation is not 100% real. It's being, driven by her anxiety, and she's looking at things from a, I guess, not straight perspective, precisely because she's overthinking. That's all I have to say about them. Overall, I think they're doing pretty great. They seem to really like each other. 2 thumbs up for these two. I think they're gonna make it. Krysten and Mitch. I think this is the beginning of us seeing Krysten crumble. And I don't mean that necessarily in a negative way. So I think since the very beginning, we can all agree that Krysten has been the #1 participant of this process who really is doing anything and everything to make her marriage work. So much so, I think that she kind of started losing herself in the process. And I think that you can only keep that up for so long before you start to implode. And I think at the beginning of this episode, we started to see, I guess, signs of the Krysten that we see toward the end of the episode. So we see her at the beginning with her friend making candles, and she mentions to her friend how everything is great, everything is lovely, I love my marriage, it's all so wonderful. But then her friend's like, oh, so you are super in love and you're very happy? She's like, whoa, I mean, I didn't say all that. And I think that she keeps repeating this because she really wants to believe it. But all of us watching this show see that week after week, she is the one putting all the effort. Like, she's probably putting, like, I would say 80%, maybe 90%, while Mitch only puts 10%. She constantly tries to change who she is to appease Mitch. So if Mitch says, I like yellow, she says, I like it too. If Mitch says, my favorite animal is the koala bear, she's gonna say, I love koala bears too. She's kind of not giving herself that space in the relationship. She's just doing whatever Mitch does, I think, because she's so scared of not having a spouse that she's just following him. And I think that maybe Krysten is not much of a follower in real life, but the circumstances and her desire to be married have made her this way. And so I think she starts cracking when she mentions that she obviously has a dream of flipping houses and Mitch doesn't support that because success is the ultimate enemy of the environment. I mean, I don't know, Mitch is the last person here to be giving any sort of advice after we saw his disgusting kitchen and his disgusting bathroom and everything disgusting about him. Even though I will say that toward the end of the episode and even the after party, I will give him some bonus points. Maybe he's just a misunderstood man. Anyway, Krysten is just in infinite oblivion to the world. She is just becoming a pushover at the beginning of the episode. So she tells her friend that no matter what, she's still gonna stick with this. She's gonna give the best version of herself, even if he continues to be hard-headed, because at the end of it all, if it fails, she knows that she did everything in her process or anything in her power to have made this relationship successful, and that way she won't look back and regret it. And I think that that's a very commendable thought, but at the same time, like, you're gonna lose yourself. That's very, very emotionally draining, especially when the other person isn't putting in anything. I think that we have seen Krysten over and over every episode, including this one, have these conversations with Mitch where she really like compliments him. She lifts him up. She puts him up here. And he's just not there for it. He's taking in all the compliments, like, but he's not willing to dish any out toward Krysten. And I don't think that's fair. Toward the end, where she finally explodes and she lets it all out, which I think was about time, that she stands up for herself. She speaks up and she says, you know, I've cared so much about Mitch, but when is it going to be Krysten's turn? So when she goes through all this, he lets her have that time. He doesn't make it about him. He respects her for her opinion. He doesn't lash out in front of her or toward her or in front of the others. And I really valued that moment, and I really appreciated how he behaved with her, because that could have gone a whole different direction, like we saw with Alexis and Justin. Now, I do think that maybe Krysten shouldn't have done that in front of all the other couples. That was a conversation that she should have had with Mitch in private. But I also get that there's some times where you just build, that you just explode and you have no control over that. I get it. And anybody can make that mistake. I think it was handled beautifully by both parts. They're both mature, or they handled it in a very mature way. This, again, it could have just been a very dramatic scene, and it wasn't. I think that when this process is all said and done, if they do not end up together, which I still think they shouldn't end up together, I think that they will remain amicable and still be friends. I think, again, it was handled beautifully, but I do not think they have any business being husband and wife. They are really different. Their mindsets are really different. I think Krysten is going to continue to overcompensate, even though she says she's not going to do it anymore, because of that whole initial attraction dynamics. Mitch said this in the after party. He said that by telling her that he wasn't attracted to her during the honeymoon, the power dynamics shifted, where he was put on top and she was kind of placed on the bottom, making her having to work harder to gain his attraction. And then that by her just lashing out and saying, you know, I'm here, I matter too, that she kind of leveled out the playing field. He said that in the after party. He did it in a very mature way, I think. I wasn't expecting him to do that. Like, he could have had a temper tantrum like he has had so many other ones. So that was handled very, very nicely. Stacia and Nate. Now, what I want to know is who told these two that it would be a fabulous romantic idea to spend their 1 month anniversary sitting in the lawyer's office signing a post-nup. This could have been done any other day, the day after perhaps. Now they have like this hovering of a little dark cloud on their anniversary. For what? This, again, it could have been done another day. I really don't have much to say about their post-nup, other than Nate said that if Stacia puts in 90% and he puts in 10%, if they were to get divorced, that he should get 10, and obviously she should get 90%. And really, what else is he gonna say at this point? She has him by the balls pretty much. She's like, either you sign this or you don't. And I already don't trust you because you haven't told me I love you. So if you don't sign this, or you give me some sort of like back talk about this, I'm gonna trust you even less. That's kind of how that went. We do see Nate later on in the episode tell her that he's starting to fall in love with her. And I do not understand why Stacia is so fixated on having him say, I love you. It's only been 30 days. Actually, if a guy told me I love you after 30 days, after knowing that he's gonna move into my home with me and that I make almost $500,000 a year, and all of a sudden he's in love with me, I think that's the red flag. I think that would be a little more questionable, because you haven't really gone through anything significant to fall in love with someone. So I think she just keeps pressing him, and he's like, all right, fine, I'll just say it. I mean, it's really convenient for him to say it, even if he doesn't feel it. But I think also that throughout this process, they are so forced, the cast members, by the experts, to say I love you, that they forget about the reality of the world, meaning that it's okay to not say I love you after 30 days. Yes, you are kind of pressured because you have this day where you have to decide whether you want to stay married or not to this person. But just because that person didn't say I love you in 2 months doesn't mean that it's not going to work out. You can have a really good, healthy relationship where everything's tracking just fine and you haven't said I love you. And when he does say I love you later on, it'll be much more significant because it's real, because you guys worked your way up to it, rather than just being surrounded by this environment of producers and other cast members and experts all pressing you to say I love you. Have you said I love you? Have you consummated your marriage? These couples spend more time dissecting their relationships and talking about them than actually being in them. And that can be very, very draining. I did like very much the scene between Stacia and her mom. Her mom gave her excellent advice. I loved seeing their relationship, how they're so comfortable with each other. It was very, very endearing. I really, really appreciated that scene between the two. Nate and Stacia, I think that they're obviously doing very well. Even though Nate hasn't necessarily done anything, I still don't particularly trust him. There's just something about him that's kind of off. But I guess so far, he hasn't set any red flags off to Stacia. Only the fact that he hasn't said, I love you. Oh, and something I also wanted to point out was that when they were having their 1 month anniversary talk, he says that he hasn't been able to fully trust Stacia because every time he does something meaningful, she kind of puts him down. And the example he used was moving in with her. And in that case, I have to give it to Stacia, because moving in with someone, it doesn't show anything really. Like, okay, you know, we're married. Well, what else were you supposed to do? You are supposed to move in with me. That's like those people that say, well, you know, at least I didn't cheat on you. You didn't do a great thing. Like, you did the bare minimum. You are my husband or wife. You aren't supposed to cheat on me. Just like you are supposed to move in with me. Like, anybody can do that. So there, I do give it to Stacia. But Stacia just needs to relax. She needs to breathe. She needs to not be so rigid and pushy. Just let things flow. Even though right now it's too late because he already told her that he's falling in love with her. And then you have their tattoos that they got for their 1 month anniversary. I thought those were a big mistake, but I guess in today's world, you can just cover that up and it will be okay. So that's pretty much what I have for them two. I know online people were saying that they have probably already slept together, because why would you get a tattoo of someone who you just met, you just married, you haven't even slept with them? And that's actually a really good point. If you haven't even slept with this person, you haven't even been physically intimate, why would you get a tattoo? So I do think that this is one of those couples, like we've seen in previous seasons, where they are physically intimate, but they decide to remain hush-hush about it and not say anything. Because other than that, like, I don't understand why you would tattoo someone's name on you, or date of marriage, or anything. Why would you get matching tattoos with someone you haven't even been physically intimate with? But I don't know. What do you guys think? Last but not least, Alexis and Justin. And I'm not gonna lie, I was dragging doing Alexis and Justin. I've just kind of been putting it off. And I was like, okay, I'll do them last. And it's finally here. It's even like emotionally draining for me to talk about them because they're so full of nonsense. I spent most of this episode wondering what all the fuss was about. Because unless I'm missing something, Alexis just keeps bringing up how she's so hurt and the pain and the hurt. And it's not adding up for me. All I've seen was, Justin had a little bit of an outburst. He also lied about the dogs. But other than that, like, I don't understand what the pain and the hurt is. Did he act inappropriately? Yes. Did he say some things that were disrespectful? Absolutely. But the same thing I keep repeating over and over again. it's two different worlds coming together. It's hard enough as it is to move in together and get married with your boyfriend who you've been dating for X amount of years and transition that relationship into a marriage. I can only imagine how much more difficult it is with a complete stranger. I get that. But you have to have patience. You guys kind of have to like teach each other to deal with each other. He made a mistake. He had an outburst. You call him out for it. And you both need to decide that you're going to work on this. I thought that was the agreement. Justin had an outburst. He did this wrong. They're going to work on it. He is vague and he doesn't answer a lot of questions. He lied about the dog. Yes, it was so dumb and so stupid. And I get it. Like, Alexis is probably like, well, if you lie about something so ridiculous and small, what else are you lying about? But you can't go into a marriage already thinking like that from the get-go based on one small argument, because that's already going to set you up for failure for the rest of your relationship. And so she's doing a Morgan where like Morgan and Binh had this one little issue that just keeps getting brought up and brought up and brought up. And it's like a snowball effect. It just keeps rolling and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That's kind of where Alexis and Justin are at. And also she keeps acting all lovey-dovey like we saw in the scene where they were doing like a scrapbook or whatever for their 1 month anniversary. And so that's not good and a little deceiving because now they're on two different pages like we saw in the dinner party. So you have Alexis who continues to act like everything's okay because she's being performative, but Justin really genuinely thinks everything's okay. That takes just one sit down talk. Sit down, talk about it, and talk about how you're gonna go from there, how you're gonna grow from there, what you're gonna do when it happens again, because it is gonna happen again. When you get with someone, you both teaching each other, you start changing little by little. You can't expect overnight change. So Alexis can't expect Justin to just stop having outbursts from one day to another. They kind of have to have a game plan. Okay, Justin, when you have your outburst again, I'm going to remind you of it. And Justin, like, what are you going to do so that when I remind you that you're having an outburst, you can rectify that? It's little by little. They're baby steps. You can't just tell someone, don't do this, and then expect them not to do it again, because it's ingrained in their behavior so deep that it's gonna take baby steps to change and modify that. And I think that's what we saw with the big blow up scene during the dinner party. Alexis kind of continues to pretend that everything's okay. Justin is on a completely different page. Alexis wants Justin to change. He doesn't know that there's a problem. She's getting upset and wildfire. So for example, Alexis tells her friend, I think it was, that she's frustrated because they continue to have the same issues over and over again and that she's not happy. That she also told them in another episode that she loved them even though she doesn't. Like, Alexis keeps doing these things where she pretends that everything's fine and they're not. So poor Justin has no idea what's going on. And so that's like a big disconnect right there. So during that little scene where they're like talking about their 1 month anniversary and they're doing the notebook and whatnot, the scrapbook, he tells her that, you know, that he knows that he can work on the things that he's done wrong, but he knows, or he feels that there's not enough time for him to flip and to rectify all his mistakes. And again, Alexis, instead of speaking up and saying, hey, you know, like, this really bothered me, and obviously in a mature way, not in a ruthless way like Morgan did, in a very mature way, she can explain like, hey, look, we have X amount of time. These are the issues we really need to work on. How are we going to get there? I'm frustrated because I see X, Y, and Z happening and I haven't seen any change. Like, that was her opportunity to do that. And instead, or if she didn't want to ruin the day because it was her 1 month anniversary, she could have just said, hey, look, I know that there are a few things I think that we need to work on. I definitely think we have time to rectify these mistakes, but these are conversations that we need to have. I don't want to necessarily do it today because we're having such a great time, but maybe we can talk about this tomorrow. Instead, she just pretends like everything's okay and she misleads him. She's like, everything's fine. Don't worry. We're going to have enough time to rectify our mistakes. The problem is that she doesn't really feel that way. She's like up to here with him and he has no idea. And that big disconnect is what we saw during the dinner party scene. Like, it could have all been avoided with one conversation, but because they are on two different pages, Justin and Alexis, they continue to struggle with the same exact things. Alexis was upset because Justin hasn't shown growth and complimented Mitch on growth, and Justin has no idea that Alexis is upset over that, so he continues to push her to say something. They just need to talk and really express how they feel, not just pretend that everything's fine and dandy because it is going to explode. Alexis, at the beginning of the season, kept saying how marriage is great, I love marriage, what's so hard about it? And Alexis, this that you're going through right now, this stupid little problem about the dogs and his little outbursts, that's not even the hardest part about marriage. Like, if you think that's hard and you are about to cave in and walk out because you went through one little problem, then marriage may not be for you, or at least not right now. What these people need is for the experts to come in, put them in their places, and really show them the big picture and put things into perspective. There's people that have marital problems that really are huge, that really are tremendous, that really are hard to overcome, and those people are still there choosing each other day after day to work on their issues. If you're gonna walk out over a problem with your dog, then again, maybe this is not for you. And the same thing goes for Justin and the rest of the cast members. I don't understand why people who are not ready to get married and are gonna walk out at the first sign of trouble continue to get picked to be on this show. Those are my opinions. I would love to know yours. Please drop them down in the section below in the comments. I want to know what you thought about episode 10 of Married at First Sight. And remember that we have Douche of the Day. And today's douche of the day goes to Morgan. She was almost tied with Alexis, but she totally outdid herself with that whole huffy puffy scene, walking in, shoving the flowers on the floor, all that drama and all that nonsense. Morgan continues to choose fight every other day. She just wants to argue. She just wants to be upset. She just wants to hold grudges. So that's why she got the douche of the day, because she continues to fight over something that happened many episodes ago. And today's hero of the day, even though I never thought I would be saying this, goes to Mitch. I choose Mitch because during the dinner scene when Krysten was just rambling and ranting and really letting go and expressing her emotions, he did not make it about himself. He understood that Krysten was going through some stuff. He tried his best to understand her perspective. He didn't interrupt her. He didn't make a big scene. So that's why I chose Mitch this episode. Let me know once again what you thought about this whole situation. Do not forget to subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next week for another episode of Married at First Sight.